Good evening. Welcome to the Portland Museum of Art. But you really, the people who are welcoming you, or the institution that's welcoming you tonight is the University of New England, and more particularly the Center for Global Humanities. Another person who has played a role in bringing our speaker tonight is Meg Wolf. She's there with an iPhone trying to take a picture of me. She has a tremendous family. Her sister Liz also played a major role and changed my life in so many ways, including my diet. Of course, you know, our usual staff, Neil, Jandro, and David De Diego, are always doing their trick. They're behind, they're in the projection room. They have done a tremendous job. People in the audience tonight, some of you may have never attended an event by UNE, and if you're from Maine, you probably know that UNE plays a tremendous role in healthcare in the state of Maine. Of course, the well-being of people, not just in our state, but in the nation and now globally, is a major concern of ours. And it's not for us just an academic issue. We really passionately believe in notions of health and wellness. We have a College of Osteopathic Medicine, the only college of medicine in the state of Maine, the Westbrook College of the Health Professions, which graduates a lot of students in a variety of fields related to healthcare. We have a College of Pharmacy, which just graduated its first class, and the Dean of the College of Pharmacy is sitting somewhere here. There she is, Del Brazo. And we just opened a College of Dental Medicine this year. The dean of that college, I don't see in the audience tonight. He might be very busy because he just happens to be also the provost. So I'm sure he has a lot on his plate. And with all these colleges of health and health profession programs, it may surprise some of you that the University of New England also decided to support a Center for Global Humanities. That's because, you know, it is a center dedicated to readings, discussions, receptions like this one, and they're all free and open to the public, despite occasional protests from the VP of Finance who's sitting right here. Because we do so because we believe that just as power foods are good for the brain, but that the power thoughts, our power foods, are good for the mind too. We need all these things, discussions, conversations, readings, discussion, and not just sound bites or text or TEDx type of events, but we believe in sustained engagement with ideas is healthy for a community and healthy for the nation and healthy for people physically. So it's therefore not a surprise that the University of New England sort of manages to combine an extensive program in the health professions with a broad definition of the humanities. And I really do hope that you continue to support these kinds of events. They're usually held on the Portland campus in Westbrook, and we have exciting lectures coming up in the future. This particular lecture is funded by a wonderful lady who's sitting right here, Barbara Goodbody, and in memory of Reverend Marion Crosley and his wife, Mahabitul Adelia Swift Crosley, and a longtime friend, and she's a longtime friend of the Westbrook College and the University of New England. Reverend Crosley was a Universalist minister. Yesterday I said he was a Unitarian, I made a mistake, who lived in Portland from 1885 to 1889 and served on the board of the Westbrook Seminary, which later became Westbrook College and is now part of UNE. As you know, Westbrook College used to be a women's college and the only such college in the state of Maine. Our speaker tonight, of course, doesn't need any introductions. Dr. Neal Barnard is very well known. As I was walking with him to the museum, he was telling me about an engagement with Alec Baldwin. I just learned he just started a talk show, and also a possibility of appearing on Al Jazeera very soon. So he has a lot on his plate, and the fact that he chose to come to Maine is an honor to us. Well, Dr. Barnard is the president of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine and an adjunct associate professor of medicine at the George Washington University School of Medicine in Washington, D.C. He has led several clinical trials investigating the effects of diet on health, including a recent study of dietary interventions in diabetes funded by the National Institutes of Health. He has authored many hundreds of publications, dozens of scientific publications, as well as 15 books for lay readers. He hosted 2 PBS television programs and is frequently called on by new programs to discuss issues related to nutrition and research. So please help me welcome Dr. Barnard.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Thank you, Anouar. Thank you for the wonderful work that you're doing at the Center for Global Humanities. I often think that if every university in every city had that kind of center, this would be a very different world. So I salute you for the wonderful work that you're doing. I also want to say a big thanks to the UNE faculty and staff for everything that they have done to really lead the way in excellence in every way. And thank you to Barbara Goodbody for your vision, and I just am so appreciative of what you've done. And thank you to Meg for making me inspired and all the support that you've done for health. So that said, I want to ask everybody a question, and that's this one. What matters most in your life? I'm seriously asking. What matters most in your life? I'm guessing it's not your car. It's not your clothes. It's probably not even your house. What matters most? Okay. Your health? Your family? Your connections? Well, what if I were to say to you that you were going to lose everyone and everything that ever mattered to you? I don't mean that you're gone or that they're gone, but what I mean is that your connection with them is broken forever. I want to show you what I mean. This is Irene and Walter. Those are my grandparents, my mother's parents. And they lived in the Midwest, and Walter was the local physician. And this was before the days of health insurance. So he would treat a patient, and they might pay him with a chicken or a side of beef. Not the healthiest lifestyle necessarily. When Walter was 60, he had a heart attack. And he had always seemingly been very healthy. But pretty soon after that, it was clear that there was something seriously wrong with him. He started to become forgetful. And sometimes he would wander out of the house without knowing where he was going. And by the time he was 65, he was dead. And my grandmother, Irene, lived a lot longer. But for the last 10 years of her life, she sat in the corner of a nursing home, not knowing anybody, including her own children, who would come and see her. My father's side of the family raised cattle. And it wasn't necessarily the healthiest lifestyle, but they lived long lives, but both of them had the same fate. That it started out with repeating the same old stories, and they finally just slipped into not knowing anything or anyone. And their hearts were beating, but their minds were totally gone. Day after day, year after year after year. And this is my dad. My dad grew up in the cattle business, did not like it very much, and left, and he was in the military for a while, and then he went to medical school, and he spent his life treating diabetes in Fargo, North Dakota. Anybody been there? Have you seen the movie? Okay, well, anyhow, when Dad was in his late 60s, he said to me, "It's happening to me." And he started to notice that his memory was not so good. And as time went on, it got worse and worse and worse, and then his personality started to change. And when my dad died last year, it was as if he had started to die 10 years before that. And it's not just my family. All of us know people where this has happened. And Alzheimer's attacks half of us by age 85. If you look at the numbers, they're frightening. 5 million people now, and that number is going to triple in the next couple of decades. Well, you sit down with your doctor and you say, "What's this all about?" And your doctor might explain it can start with just a lapse. You can be 25 years old, you can have a memory lapse. You go into the grocery store and you see somebody there What's their name? And you sort of go into the other aisle hoping that they don't see you until you think that their name is. And of course, there's somebody there you ought to know. But if we're not sleeping well or under stress, we can have lapses. But if they become more frequent, we call it mild cognitive impairment. This is a person who's maybe a little up in years, but you're still driving, you're managing your own checkbook, but you're having lapses on a daily basis, and you're worried about it. And then if learning and remembering start to be trouble, and then reasoning, problem solving aren't so good, and visual spatial ability. This is, I'll ask you to draw a clock, and can you get the numbers in the hands in the right position? That's visual spatial ability. Fourth is language, and fifth is personality. If all five of these things are starting to have trouble, that's when doctors say, I think we need to have a talk about Alzheimer's disease. And you'll say, well, I don't want Alzheimer's disease. I have seen it. Give me any disease that you have other than that one because I don't want it. And the doctor will say, I'm sorry. There's a gene. It's genetic. And the gene is called the APOE epsilon 4 allele. If you got it from one parent, you have 3 times the risk. If you got it from both parents, 10 to 15 times the risk. What can you do? Get different parents. No, well, that's not going to work out very well. Well, I want to share with you a whole new approach to this that suggests that genes are not destiny. There's an awful lot that we can do to change things. I want to show you how the brain remembers things, what goes wrong with it, and how we can turn things around. Okay, this is the brain, and right in the middle of the brain is this organ. Centuries ago, some anatomists thought that looks sort of like a seahorse. They were apparently imaginative anatomists, but they said that looks like a seahorse, so they gave it the Latin name, which is hippocampus, seahorse. That is the center of memory. It has the job of deciding what's worth remembering. So if it is, it's stored. If it's not, the hippocampus lets it go. So I'm at a restaurant, and the waiter comes up and says, hi, my name's Kelly. I'll be your waiter tonight. And the hippocampus goes, no, I don't think so. But things that do need to be remembered, the hippocampus will send them up into the cerebral hemispheres where they are stored. Now, you don't get a new brain cell for every memory because your brain would be so big, you'd carry it around in a wheelbarrow. But what you do is you make new connections between cells, synapses, and you get more and more connections between cells, and that's how memories are stored. Well, if you look inside the brain, you see something that's not so good. Between these perfectly normal brain cells are these brown blobs. Well, what is this? This is a brain cell, and you see the connections running off, but out of that brain cell oozes protein. This happens in all our brains. We're having protein coming out. It's called amyloid protein. That's normal. However, it can collect in these sort of balls of yarn or little meatballs that are called beta amyloid plaques. Plaque is just a generic word for a collection. Your dentist might say, there's a little plaque on your teeth. Or a cardiologist might say, well, I'm looking for plaque in your arteries. It just means buildup. These are in the brain. And they come from protein that's oozing out of cells, sort of like an old sausage maker, cranking it out. And as it comes out, it gets snipped off and it collects in these little meatballs. And that is not normal. Back in the early 1900s, Dr. Alzheimer said, what is that? And they named a disease after him. Now, what is this? That's Chicago. In 1993, a study got started called the Chicago Health and Aging Project, and all they did was interview thousands of people about what they ate. And then they looked at who stayed clear, mentally clear, and who didn't. And the first food that they keyed in on was something I knew about. When I was a kid, growing up in Fargo, I would wake up to the smell of bacon. And I would run down to the kitchen, and all 5 of my mom's kids would be down there, and my mother would be taking a fork, and she would put it into the frying pan, and she would take the bacon strips out and put them on a paper towel to cool down. And then that hot bacon grease, you don't throw that away. That's good bacon grease. So my mother would carefully pick up the hot pan and pour it into a jar to save it. And it didn't go in the refrigerator. It just went on the shelf. Because my mother knew that when bacon grease cools down, what happens to it? It solidifies, right? Well, the fact that it's solid at room temperature is a sign that it's loaded with saturated fat. That's bad fat. And the next day, she would spoon it back into the frying pan and fry eggs in it. It's amazing any of her children lived to adulthood, I have to say. But that's the way we ate. So saturated fat is bad fat. Saturated fat, dairy products are the biggest source, but it's also in meat and eggs and a few other things. Some people in Chicago eat these things. And the low saturated fat group ate about 13 grams of it a day. The high group, 25 grams. So the researchers said, do they differ in their Alzheimer's risk? I want to show you the numbers. Okay, so are you with me? The people who ate the most saturated fat had 3 times the risk, or more than 3 times the risk of Alzheimer's disease. Well, good heavens. How does it add up? 2 eggs, that's 3 grams. 1 strip of bacon, that's another gram. Do you know anyone who has 1 strip of bacon, by the way? A chicken thigh, even without the skin, that's 4.5 grams. A glass of whole milk, another 4.5. Pizza for 1 is 12, and I'm going to add that up. I'm in the high-risk group. Do you know anyone who eats those foods? Everybody eats those foods. And it showed that we were at high risk. But it's not just Alzheimer's disease. Do you remember that condition that precedes it, where you might be 55 years old, but you're having some trouble remembering things, this mild cognitive impairment? Researchers in Finland looked at mild cognitive impairment. Large group of people, 50 years old, and they tracked them for the next 21 years. And some people ate relatively little saturated fat, less than 21.6 grams. Others were higher. And they looked at the numbers. Bingo, exactly the same story. So it's not just Alzheimer's. It's a question of sort of just forgetfulness in later life that might be linked to bacon, dairy products, eggs, foods high in saturated fat. Well, wait a minute. I knew it was bad for my heart. Could it be bad for my brain? Well, what about that gene, that APOE epsilon 4 allele? Some people in Finland had that. So they then redid the study looking just at those people, just the people who had that gene. Some of them were low in fat, some of them had a high-fat diet, but look, if you avoided saturated fat, your risk of developing memory problems was cut by, that's about 80%. Genes are not destiny. There are genes that are dictator genes. The genes for blue eyes. They say blue eyes, and you know what, that's an order. You're going to have blue eyes. You can't fight with them. But the genes for Alzheimer's disease are more like committees. They make suggestions. And you can say, well, I don't really think I'm going to eat my bacon today. And I'm going to change my diet dramatically. And you can say no to those genes. Did you know there are genes for diabetes, genes for cancer? In most cases, they are committees. And the ability to control gene expression through simple changes that we make from day to day is one of the most exciting areas in medicine and health right now. It's not just a set of blueprints that our body follows. These are things that we can change. Oh, what's that? There's fat in there too. What is the fat in a donut? What's the fat that's in donuts and snack pastries? Anybody know? Trans fats, that's right, trans fats. Some people in Chicago eat donuts. Some people don't eat very much, fairly low. Some people high. Let's run those numbers. I want to show you. Even worse than the saturated fat. So when these numbers came out, I got to tell you, doctors were horrified because they said, people eat dairy products, they eat cheese, they eat meat, they eat donuts all the time. We are going to have an epidemic of Alzheimer's disease, and you know what? We are. We're in the middle of it right now. When I saw these numbers, I was thrilled because you can decide what's your diet and the diet of your family. And suddenly, in an area where we had absolutely no control and we thought it was all genetic, all written on your blueprints before you were born, suddenly we've got the beginnings of tools. But these are just the first 2. There's much more than that. But Why? Why would these fats affect the brain? Well, researchers at Kaiser Permanente had an interesting thought. It could be cholesterol. Because if I eat the bad fats, it raises my cholesterol, right? Maybe the cholesterol is affecting the brain. So they did a study. They brought in a large group of people, almost 10,000. And everybody got their cholesterol tested. These were the people with the lower cholesterol, and this was their Alzheimer's risk. Higher cholesterol, higher risk. Higher cholesterol still, and even higher risk. And the people with the highest cholesterol levels had a much higher risk of developing Alzheimer's. Apparently, cholesterol influences the production of those amyloid strands. And it also turns out that that gene, that APOE epsilon 4 allele, it doesn't cause Alzheimer's. What it causes is your body to make a protein that carries cholesterol in the blood and in the brain like a little butter knife that takes that cholesterol and spackles it where it doesn't belong. What if I have the gene but I don't eat cholesterol? What if I change my diet so that I maintain a very, very low cholesterol level? I'm changing my biochemistry with simple changes. All right, so I live in Chicago, I'm at high risk, I'm eating all these things. Can I change? Can I? What can I change? Can I get rid of something there? Let's say I want to get rid of that glass of milk. Who's had almond milk? How's it taste? Is it good? Okay. Happens to have 0 cholesterol, 0 saturated fat. So I'm going to get rid of this one, bring in the almond milk, rerun my numbers. I'm doing better. If the research numbers in Chicago apply to me, I've cut a lot of saturated fat, my risk is dropping. Can I get rid of more things? What can I get rid of? Bacon? Okay. Away goes the bacon. There's veggie bacon. It's sort of a liberal interpretation of the original. It'll make an okay BLT. Can I get rid of some more stuff? What can I get rid of? Eggs? Out they go. We'll have some oatmeal with blueberries and strawberries. I'm getting rid of that chicken thigh, too. I'm going to have a vegetable sandwich. Let's rerun our numbers. I'm doing better. Okay. What else can I get rid of? Anything? What? Pizza? Can I get a pizza? Can I get a cheeseless pizza? Is that possible? Can I get a pizza with no cheese? All right, here, let's see. There it goes. All right, there's my vegan pizza. Let's see how I do. Well, I don't know, because nobody in Chicago eats that well. Well, it turns out there are some places where people eat that well. Loma Linda, California is an interesting place. It's about an hour east of Los Angeles. And when I started my work in research, I couldn't figure out why researchers always go to Loma Linda. Why are they there? What are they doing there? Well, I finally figured it out. Loma Linda is where many Seventh-day Adventists live. And the church says you are not supposed to smoke or drink alcohol or use caffeine or eat meat. And almost all Adventists are really good at the first 3. But what that means is you've got a huge population of non-smoking, non-drinking, really health-conscious people who vary in diet habits, and that allows you to see how they do. So they looked at the meat-eating Adventists, and they showed that they would develop a little bit of dementia as time went on, and they compared them to the vegetarian Adventists. These might be the cheese-eating vegetarians, but you get the idea. They're doing better. So the idea of getting away from those bad fats is a good idea. But there's something else. There's something else lurking in those plaques, and I want to show you what it is. If I take that and I dissect it, what we discover is, yes, there's beta amyloid protein and there's cholesterol, but there is also some iron and some copper. What's that about? Did you ever hear anybody talk about that in your brain? No. Well, you need a little bit of iron. What do you need iron for? Red blood cells, right? Without it, you're not going to oxygenate your brain. You need some copper for enzyme function. But what if I have a cast iron pan? It's out on my picnic table outside my backyard, and 4 days later, I think, oh, I left it outside, and it rained. What's happened to my cast iron pan? It rusted. That's oxidation. Iron oxidizes in your body, too. And a penny over time oxidizes. It oxidizes in your body. The metals go to the brain, and as they oxidize, they produce free radicals. Free radicals are molecules, mostly oxygen, that you've inhaled, but that have become unstable because of the oxidizing metals. They lose an electron, they become unstable, and they're like sparks that want to just singe through the connections between cells. Are you with me? Okay, so where am I getting all these metals? You need some, but the problem is this. If you get too much, the fact that these metals really are double-edged swords becomes very obvious. How many people have a cast iron pan? If you're using it once a month, who cares? But if it's every day, the iron is getting into your foods more than you need. Copper pipes, okay? Meats, liver, loaded with both iron and copper. One-a-day vitamins are interesting. Like all brands of vitamins, they want to sell you their product. And the vitamins themselves are good. But they know you're more likely to buy it if they say, we've got everything you need. We're throwing some iron. We'll throw in copper. And you say, wait. I'm getting that in food. You're overdosing me. Well, that's exactly, read the label. That's what you'll see. They have figured this out with iron. For people over 50, Centrum and some other brands say, okay, you've been eating iron all your life. It's stored up in your body. You shouldn't have more. It'll be bad for your heart, bad for your brain. They leave it out. But they're still overdosing people with copper, okay? Now, have you heard about aluminum? Aluminum in the brain? This is very controversial. Researchers are still fighting about it. But I want to share with you the data. When you open the tap of water, you're drinking water. In some communities, it has aluminum in it. And in 88 county districts, there were some that were low in aluminum, and some were high. But what made headlines a long time ago was that the counties that had a lot of aluminum in their water had a lot more Alzheimer's disease, 50% more. Same thing in France. Well, there isn't any aluminum in your water in a river or in the well. It's added at the water purification plant because it precipitates out solids. And some places are really good at getting it out again, and others just sort of leave it in, and you drink it. And so people have been concerned about it. Now, there are many good neurologists who say, I don't think it matters. I think it's other things. And there are many who say, you're crazy. We should be avoiding this. Here's where I come down. I say, let them fight it out. In the meanwhile, recognize that it is in the brains of people with Alzheimer's disease. It's a clear-cut neurotoxin, because we see this in industrial accidents. When people get too much aluminum, it's a clear-cut, it causes brain damage. And also, there is zero requirement for it. You need a little iron, a little copper. Your body does not need one scrap of aluminum. So I say, let's skip it. Well, where is it? It can be in your drinking water. Your local water department will tell you. And if you're unsure, you can get those big tanks of water delivered to your house, or a reverse osmosis filter will take it right out, very easy. Aluminum pots and pans, don't use them unless the cooking surface is coated with something. You can buy some baking powder at the store that has aluminum. That one is right next to it, costs the same, and has none. Very easy. You can get a pizza that often has aluminum in the crust or in the cheese. It's written right in the ingredients. The little single-serve salt things at fast food chains, they have aluminum added so that it pours when it's humid. My dad had an acid stomach. He always had his bottle of Maalox. And at some point, I found myself wondering, what does Maalox mean? It means magnesium, aluminum, hydroxide. You're just drinking aluminum all day long. If he had bought Tums instead, they don't have aluminum. Very simple. If you use a deodorant, it has no aluminum. If you use an antiperspirant, it has aluminum that does pass the skin into the blood. So let other people fight it out. I suggest you just stand back, know where they are, and if aluminum turns out to be fine 30 years from now, fair enough. Okay. Now, what I have been saying is that metals cause free radicals to form in the brain, and these are like sparks that singe through the brain. We need a fire extinguisher. We need to put out those sparks, and we've got one. It's called vitamin E. Vitamin E. Vitamin E is in spinach, it's in mangoes, it's in especially nuts and seeds, and it's an antioxidant. Knocks out free radicals. Now, some people in Chicago eat these things, and some people don't. So the researcher said, if this theory is correct, if it is true that metals go into the brain, oxidize, cause free radicals to form, if that's true, then people who eat a lot of vitamin E ought to be protected. They should have less Alzheimer's risk, and I want to show you the numbers. Let's see. Exactly. The people with low vitamin E intake, the people who are not eating their spinach, are at higher risk, more than twice as high, compared to the people who are eating it. So all we're doing is we're just adding up things that can protect us. Very, very simple things to do. But one thing about vitamin E is it's in these foods, broccoli, spinach, sweet potatoes. There's lots of it in nuts and seeds. However, there are 8 different forms in nature. I can sell you a pill legally with just one of those forms. And sometimes when you overdose a patient with one form of a vitamin, it stops others from being absorbable. And so the pills don't seem to work. So foods have 8 forms. And the Chicago study, all that you needed was 8 milligrams, real easy. And an ounce of nuts or seeds gives you 5. Very easy. By the way, be careful about this. Did you know that there is heroin in cashews? Well, there may not be heroin in them, but for some reason, I find that when I open the pack and after I eat them, I want them again. And do any of you have this problem, or am I the only one? They are somehow addicting, and they're pretty fatty too. So you want to be careful about that. So here's my trick, is an ounce of nuts or seeds. That's one handful, small handful. So you pour them in your hand, and by the time it hits your fingers, that's more than an ounce. Then don't eat them, crumble them up, and put them on your salad or on your oatmeal. Use them as an ingredient, not as a snack food. So don't shovel them in, just put them on things, and that will stop you from overdoing it on the nuts, okay? All right, now this is for extra credit. Your brain is working all day long, and it makes this compound called homocysteine. This won't be on the test, but homocysteine is factory waste. You know, factories make waste products, and your body makes homocysteine. The problem with it is it's damaging to you in the same way as waste products could, exhaust and things like that can damage a factory. So your cardiologist or your doctor knows homocysteine is bad for your heart. It's bad for your brain. We've got to shovel it out of your body. How do I do that? Well, first of all, the test is really easy to do. Every doctor in America knows how to test homocysteine. And the way they get rid of it is with 3 vitamins. 3 vitamins. These are shovels that get it out of your body. Folate. Folate is a B vitamin, and it's in leafy greens. Think of foliage, green leaves. Folate. It's a B vitamin. B6 is in beans and bananas, and B12 is actually the one vitamin that should come from a supplement. It's actually more absorbable as a supplement than it is in food. But researchers at the University of Oxford did an interesting thing. They brought in a group of people, and they gave them pills that had the B vitamins in them, and others got a placebo, a dummy pill. Didn't do anything. And as years went by, 2 years, they showed the placebo people got worse and worse and worse. And these were all people who had mild cognitive impairment to start with, so this is not good. But the people who got the vitamins, and it started getting rid of that homocysteine that's damaging the brain, their memory started to improve over time. And then they did MRIs of the brain, imaging of the brain. This is looking down from above. Now, the size of this hole, that doesn't matter. That's just a normal ventricle that allows this fluid to go from the brain to the spinal cord. What matters is, can you see that bluish lining? This is a special technique, MRI technique, that shows the atrophy over time. This person had the misfortune of being assigned to the placebo group, had a high homocysteine level that didn't go down, and had 2.5% atrophy every single year. After a decade, you're talking very serious brain atrophy. But here's another person who, again, the size of this isn't what matters so much. The size of this, what matters is there's much less blue. This was a person who was taking the B vitamins. Atrophy was cut to about 0.5% per year. Much better, okay? So, all right, I get it. You're talking about get away from the bad fats and the trans fats and eat the vitamin-rich foods, healthy things. Sounds like the Mediterranean kind of approach. And that's true. People living in Mediterranean countries, they're not eating that big hunk of steak. These are people who know a chickpea when they see one, and they eat generally a much healthier lifestyle than other people do. And they also drink some wine. Researchers have pointed out that wine drinking is beneficial. When I was in college, I think some of my roommates fancied that they were in the Mediterranean diet. But surprisingly enough, daily wine consumption of about a glass of wine reduces Alzheimer's risk a lot. So researchers at the University of Cincinnati said, wait a minute, I don't think we want to recommend that because alcohol increases breast cancer risk, and if it's more than a drink a day, it causes all kinds of problems. That's not a good way. What if it's not the alcohol? What if it's the grape that does it? So here's what they tested. Grape juice. They brought in a group of people. The average age was 78 years old. Everybody had mild cognitive impairment. Everybody was having trouble remembering where they left their car keys. And all they tested was grape juice. And here's what they did. They gave them a pint a day. That's 2 cups. Their learning improved. Their recall improved in 3 months. Wait a minute. That's ridiculous. How could that be? 3 months to get a measurable improvement? Why? Well, think about it. A grape has a rough life. A grape has to sit on a vine all day long with no sunscreen. And the sun beats down. Why doesn't it shrivel up on day one? The reason why is because it has what are called anthocyanins, which are powerful antioxidants that happen to be colored purple. And there are a variety of colors of them in nature. And so the researchers said, well, wait a minute. Those antioxidants that protect the grape, when you eat them, when you eat the juice or the grape, they pass into your blood. And there'll be antioxidants for you too. And the grape isn't unique. Let's try other things that have anthocyanins. So back into the laboratory, blueberries. They brought in a new group of people. They all had mild cognitive impairment, a pint a day of blueberry juice, same story. Better learning, better recall. And think about this. When you go into the produce department at the store, there is nothing redder than a ripe tomato. That happens to be the antioxidant lycopene that you're seeing. But it screams its color out at you. And an orange carrot or an orange sweet potato, that's beta-carotene. Or the anthocyanins. These are tremendously bright colors. Aren't they pretty? Well, wait a minute. They're not just pretty. The human retina evolved to detect them. The human retina evolved to be able to understand where antioxidants are at a distance of 100 yards. If you brought your cat to the produce department, your cat is a meat eater. Your cat does not recognize antioxidants, can't see them. Your cat can detect the fish counter. A dog has tremendous sense of hearing, can hear at frequencies that we can't detect, can smell things so acutely that they're hired by the TSA. Human beings obtain the ability to detect antioxidants because they are good for us, and people who did not have that ability died out. And the retina became so acute that we now are attracted to these things because they're beautiful. There's nobody who ever said, oh, well, those colors, I can't walk in there. No, we are all attracted to them. But what do we do now? We take those colors and we put them in an M&M's bag. And our kids aren't interested in tomatoes and carrots and grapes or anything anymore. All right? Am I wrong? Is this making sense? Okay. So the healthiest foods are simple foods. Fruits, grains, what are legumes? Legumes? Beans, peas, lentils, that's right, and vegetables. Those are the 4 staples of life. Who eats that way? Well, this is Okinawa. Okinawa is an area right at the very bottom of Japan. And researchers have studied Okinawa because people live to be 100 there very frequently. The dietary staple in Okinawa is not fish. It's not rice. It's sweet potatoes. Huge amounts of sweet potatoes. This is a friend of mine in the middle of this slide. Her name is Masu. My friend lives in the U.S. This is her mother, Masu. Masu lives in Okinawa, and she eats a lot of sweet potatoes. And there she was back in the 1950s or 60s, And there she is at age 88. There she is at 100, digging up her sweet potatoes. These very simple foods. By the way, they do throw you a party when you get to be 100. But unfortunately, you have to share it with all the other people turning 100. This is Dr. Ellsworth Wareham. And Dr. Wareham was on an American destroyer sailing right past Okinawa in World War II. And he didn't know Masu, but he ate almost identically to the way she ate. Why? Because he grew up on a farm in Alberta. And they would send him into the barn to milk the cows. And he would come back in a little while later with a bucket, and he would set it down. And they would say, Ellsworth, why don't you have some milk? And he would say, no, thank you. They said, well, why not? And he would say, it doesn't seem very hygienic to me. And he was a very fastidious young man, and he had seen what it takes to milk a cow, and he thought it was kind of dirty, and he didn't want to eat it. And then they would say, well, go out and get eggs. And that was even worse. So very early in life, Ellsworth Wareham became a vegetarian, and he ate simple foods. He would eat beans and potatoes, but he didn't want the meats and the animal products. But what was remarkable about him, he became a surgeon, very well-known surgeon. And he did a tour of duty in Vietnam and led quite a team that was brought to the White House to be decorated by first Lyndon Johnson. There he is on the right of President Johnson. And again by President Nixon. There he is on Nixon's left. But what was most remarkable about Dr. Ellsworth Wareham was that when he hit 65, he didn't retire. He said, I'm feeling pretty good. And his numbers were great. Everything, he was healthy as could be and a terrific surgeon. And he hit 70 and 75. And he said, this is ridiculous. I got to tell you, if I hit 95, I'm retiring for sure. That's what he did. At age 95, Dr. Ellsworth Wareham retired. And the other surgeon said, where are you going? You can't leave. You've got steady hands. You've got a good mind. You've got more experience than all the rest of us put together. And he said, wait. Patient finds out the surgeon's 95. That's not like a big confidence builder, guys. I got to go home. So anyway, I had lunch with Dr. Wareham not too long ago. He's not quite 100. And he gets up every morning, and he goes out into his backyard, and he does surgery all over his garden. So he's got the most well-kept garden you've ever seen. So the point being, there's something to be said for these humble, simple, unprocessed foods that come out of the ground and scream color and health to you. And people who take advantage of them do very well. Okay, if I do that, are there extra benefits? Well, as a matter of fact, what if I'm avoiding those bad fats because I want to protect my brain? Well, this will be on the test. 1 gram of fat has 9 calories. A gram is about a third of a thimbleful. But a gram of carbohydrate has only 4. So if I'm avoiding fats for health, I'm avoiding a lot of calories. I want to show you a picture. This is a man named Jean Remy, who lives in Canada. He sent me these pictures because he was 320 pounds. And his doctor said, you've got prediabetes, you're not healthy at all, you're in trouble. And his wife, as fate would have it, happened to have a copy of a book I wrote about diabetes. And the book does not say, don't eat potatoes. The book says, avoid the sources of bad fats. Don't eat meats and dairy products, but eat all you want of the healthy foods. He did that. By the time he got to chapter 4, he had lost 160 pounds. And his energy came back. This is Jenna, same story. She wanted to lose some weight because she didn't feel good about herself. Not by starving or avoiding carbohydrate, but she avoided the bad fats, the animal products. And she got her waistline back and got her health back. She got her confidence back. We see this every day in our research center in Washington, D.C. Now, exercise counts too. Very important. At the University of Illinois, researchers brought in a group of people, and they said, we want you to take a brisk walk. Get your heart pumping 3 times a week. And it reversed brain shrinkage, especially in this part of the brain called the hippocampus, which is Latin for, see, who's had their asparagus today? Very good. Okay. All right. And it actually measurably improved their memory. Think about it. If you're exercising, your heart gets pumping, the oxygen goes up to the brain, the nutrients go to the brain, the waste gets pulled out. It measurably increases that part of the brain. So I have my exercise tips that I would like to share with you. Arrive at the airport as late as possible. carry massively heavy luggage, just run for the plane. I do this every day or two. And I think it would help you as well. That's not what these researchers did. What they did was started with a 10-minute walk 3 times a week. Next week, 15. Next week, 20, 25. And once you hit 40 minutes, that's it. You can do more. It's good to do more. But 40 minutes of brisk walking 3 times a week has been shown in research studies to reverse brain shrinkage. Very easy. And by the way, I got to tell you something. There is, researchers in Canada showed that people who have 2 languages do better. It actually delays cognitive decline by about 5 years. Now, why is that? Because I've got 2 words for everything. I'm using things. Now, your high school French is no good unless you're using it now. And that's why every week I talk to my friend Jacqueline by phone, and I'm building up my brain for French. And you can do this in any way you want to. And it's also fun. So using your brain is a great way to go. So mental activities, intellectual activities, documentaries, newspapers, and make it a good newspaper. Something. Crosswords, anagrams, things that relate to foods are really very, very good for you. Okay. By the way, I was sitting in a lecture by Dr. Dean Ornish. Do you know Dean Ornish? Medical genius. He showed a plant-based diet reverses heart disease, opens the arteries up again. But he showed this slide. And he said, if I focus on myself, if I focus too much on I will be ill. But if I focus on the group, on we, I will be well. And he was making a good point that we need support. But while he was making that very good point, I got wrapped up with something completely different, which is there are words hidden inside other words. And you can take all kinds of words and you can rearrange them, and it's amazing to see what you come up with. So I'm convinced that this is probably good for my brain. So anyway, take this on faith, okay? There are companies that make a science of this. Do you know Lumosity? They make these little video games, but they help you to improve your processing speed, your memory, and your reasoning. Hi, David. Last time you were here, you ordered such and such, and if you remember, you get points. Or how many words begin with D-I-G? Okay? Simple, 5 minutes a day. Very easy, okay? Now, the most important thing, whether we're talking about physical activity or cognitive activity, you must stop. It's important to stop. Got to go to sleep. Because the brain cannot work 24 hours a day. It needs downtime. And at the first half of the night, you have your brain, if I put EEG leads on your brain is engaged in slow wave sleep. And while that's happening, your brain is filing away the experiences of the day, the things you've learned. These file folders that have been stacking up are getting put away. The second half of the night, REM sleep, you're dreaming. And dreams have emotions. You're integrating emotions. What if I'm up all night? Next day, I can't remember things. My memory is poor, and my emotional control is poor. I'll be grouchy or giddy, or you'll go back and forth between the two. So it gets worse. Remember that sausage maker that's cranking out the amyloid protein? That stops at night. It's on a circadian rhythm. It goes way, way down at night, except if you stay up, if you're awake, it turns back on. And you're making more amyloid protein day by day, or hour by hour during the night. So go to sleep. My most important medical device is this one. 10 o'clock, trust me on this, 10 o'clock, just however great the book is you're reading, close it, go to sleep. We get up the next morning and you're going to feel lots better. Wait, there's more. This is Dr. Dwayne Gravlin. I want to show you his picture because he not only is a physician, but he was a NASA astronaut in training. Got home from work one day, drove into his driveway. There was a woman standing there. Didn't recognize her, and he asked her what she was doing and if he could help her. And she looked at Dwayne, and it became pretty clear in a couple minutes that Dwayne did not recognize his own wife. After a brief discussion, they got into the car, and they drove to the emergency room, and they were trying to figure out how Dr. Dwayne Gravlin had lost his memory. The only thing they could figure out was this. He had started a prescription for atorvastatin, that's Lipitor, cholesterol-lowering drug, and they decided to stop it. And as the days went by, his memory returned, but so did his high cholesterol. So he started it again at half the dose, and within a month, his memory was wiped out. Nothing after age 13 was left. And so they threw that away. His memory gradually worked its way back, and he went to the FDA. He said, I think you need to know this. And they said, well, ridiculous. We know if there's one safe drug we have, it's Lipitor. It lowers cholesterol very effectively, and it does. Of course, it does have muscle side effects and liver side effects, and it does increase your risk of diabetes and cataracts, but other than that, it's safe. As time went on, hundreds of cases of memory problems linked to Lipitor have come to light, and the FDA now acknowledges it. But don't get me wrong, Lipitor is generally a safe drug, and it does lower cholesterol, and this problem is rare. Having said that, 90% of people taking Lipitor do not need it. What I mean is, I don't mean they didn't have high cholesterol. What I mean is they are being treated for their diet. The cholesterol that's in their blood would not be there if they were eating vegetables and fruits and whole grains and beans and avoiding the animal products. We have a culture that says, let's just pig out all that stuff, and the doctor is going to come behind you with a prescription to try to clean it up as best as possible. The other 10% really are making more cholesterol no matter what they eat, and I think you can make a good case for them having it. But we would have a lot fewer side effects if we had a healthier diet. And it's not just that. There are a number of drugs that can cause this problem, and all I suggest is that when a person has an acute change in mental status, the first thing the doctor should think about and the first thing the family should think about is marching into the bathroom, throwing open the medicine cabinet, and seeing what is in there. Because medicines cause problems and medicines add up. The first one's safe, the second or third anticholinergic acting together can cause serious problems, okay? Again, medicines have a role, but things should be switched. As Anouar and I were talking about the other day, right now, conventional medicine says, you got a high cholesterol? Let me write you a prescription. An alternative would be a vegan diet. Wait. I don't have a Lipitor deficiency. So what we ought to do is deal with a diet-related disease in the opposite way, with a diet change first, and whatever support and information that you need to conquer that problem. And for those people where a diet change isn't enough, then use medicines as alternative when the conventional approach of a nutritional change didn't succeed. That's the kind of medicine that we ought to be having. All right, medical, thank you. And you know what, if we did that, I have to say, if we did that, doctors would have Wednesday afternoons off. We'd have such healthy patients. And there are a lot of medical conditions that can cause these problems as well. So just putting everything together, I'm checking my scorecard. Can I avoid bad fats? Can I? Sure. Can I avoid excess metals? Now that I know where they are. Can I have vitamin-rich foods like vegetables and fruits? Sure I can. Can I have vitamin B12 every day? That's simple. Can I be physically active? Sure. Can I be mentally active? We're doing that already. Can I get some sleep? Well, yes. Can I be careful about medicines? Sure you can. Okay, so the power plate. This is what people should be eating for health. And in 2009, we, PCRM, sent this to the federal government. And we said, the pyramid is a nice shape, but people eat off a plate. Give them a plate. And we sent this to them in 2009. We petitioned them to accept it. Did you see what they came out with in 2011? They call it My Plate. This is official U.S. government policy. This is not what I sent them. But it's close. We're making progress. Okay, so what I have just suggested is that the healthiest diet doesn't have animal products at all. It doesn't have meat in it. It doesn't have dairy products. It's got these healthy, simple foods. And you might say, okay, I'll believe you. But if I eat that way, I'll have to live in the garage. My family's going to divorce me. I'm not even sure I could do it. So the last thing I want to share with you is how we give this to patients that come to see us. Because I have never seen anyone who can't do it. Step one, don't change your diet. Take just a week, 2 weeks, and think about foods that you like to eat, but that are totally healthy. And I give everybody a list: breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack. I say, go home, fill in things that are plant-based that you like, and come back to see me in a week. And so they think, okay, breakfast, oatmeal. If I put some cinnamon and raisins on it, it's actually okay. Blueberry pancakes, cornflakes, I can put cow's milk, no, soy milk, rice milk, hemp milk, almond milk. Okay, so they're working it out. Same thing for lunch. You're just filling out your list with things to see what you like. There are lots of recipes for you, and you just try them. And if you're going out to an Italian place, could you get a plant-based meal at an Italian restaurant? Could you? What would they bring you? What would they serve you? Okay, all right, well, we'll start with maybe a nice salad and maybe some pasta e fagioli or lentil soup or minestrone. And then when my angel hair pasta comes, it's topped with artichoke hearts and seared oyster mushrooms and chunky tomatoes and lots of spice if I want it. And I guess I can have the espresso afterwards. That's from the bean group. How about Mexican cuisine? Can I do it Mexican style? Would that work? I could? What could I have? Bean burrito? Okay. Veggie fajitas? Beans? All right, that's too easy. Chinese. Could I do it Chinese? What could I get? What could I get at a Chinese restaurant that's plant-based, no meat, no shrimp on it? What could I get? Okay, all right, rice dishes, vegetable dishes. I could get tofu. Okay. Extra points for Japanese. There's some pretty good Japanese restaurants right here in this town. And extra points because they are very low in oil, too. They'll make you vegetable sushi, make you edamame miso soup. Really nice, creative things. Now, some of your patients might be at Subway, right? So they'll leave off the cheese and meat if you ask, and they'll fill a sandwich full of lettuce, tomatoes, onions, olives, spinach, cucumbers, red wine vinegar. They'll toast it for you. Call it Veggie Delight. This is not the pinnacle of culinary art, but at the same time, if that's where you're eating now, what's the best thing there? Skip the meat taco, have the bean burrito, hold the cheese. Okay. So all I'm doing is I'm taking my list and I'm filling it out with the plant-based options for every meal. And then when you're ready, take 3 weeks and do it 3 weeks all plant-based, all vegan, all the time as a test. You're driving this car around the block just to see if you like it. And after 3 weeks, 2 things will have happened. The first is you're healthier. Weight's coming down, energy's going up. If you had digestive problems, those are gone. If you have diabetes, your numbers are improving. In some cases, so much, your doctor is already backing off on your medicine. By the way, this is not a weak diet. This is very powerful. So if you have diabetes or hypertension or you're on medicines, tell your doctor you're going to do it and have your doctor's number because your doctor may well have to back you down on medicines because they are now, because you don't need them or you don't need so much. Okay? So you're going to physically be healthier. But the second thing is you'll discover that your tastes are changing. And you don't expect that. But let me ask this group. How many of you ever switched from whole milk to skim milk? Let me see hands. How many switched to skim milk? What was it like at first? Watery? Didn't even look right? How many of you got used to the taste? Okay. Did you ever go back? You ever taste the whole milk again? What was that like? Whole milk, if you haven't had whole milk in a while, it tastes pretty creamy, doesn't it? It's too thick. Well, your whole life it was fine, but when you get away from it, you discover that your taste buds change. And they don't want that greasy taste anymore. And so nobody's going to tempt you with whole milk, once you've gotten away from it. The first week on a vegan diet, it seems too light. It does. You're going to say, I guess I got to acquire a taste for folk music now. Break out the tie-dye guys. Swell. Bring me some philosophy books. Well, it's great. Well, I got to tell you, after about week 2, it starts to make sense. You discover that there are cool restaurants that do this. And you read an article about Bill Clinton, that he's doing vegan and how good it's been for him. And Serena Williams is at the top of the tennis world, and she's doing a plant-based diet. And Ellen DeGeneres and all these people are doing it. And you discover, I kind of like this. I like how I feel. And then after 3 weeks, if you went back and had a double bacon cheeseburger and you take a bite, you just discover you are just past it. This food seems so pedestrian. And you've discovered things that are much more exciting. So there are what I call transition foods, if you want. Instead of a hamburger, there is a veggie burger. Instead of Jimmy Dean pork sausage, there is Gimme Lean vegan sausage. You don't have to have these, but they're there. They'll hold your hand if you want. So we've got lots of resources. These are my books, but there are lots more. And have any of you done our Kickstart program? PCRM's Kickstarter. It's fun, isn't it? This is free. You go to this website, pcrm.org, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. You put in your email, and then Alicia Silverstone sends you an email, and she says, hi, I want to share with you how I keep my Hollywood figure. It's plant-based foods, and she gives you menus and recipes and a little embedded cooking video. And then she introduces you how you can get on a message board with everyone else doing the Kickstart. And the next day you get another email and another every day with menus and recipes all free. And then they say, by the way, there's an app, and that's free too. And then we have it not only in English, we have it in Spanish, we have it in Mandarin, we have one for people from India, but in English, but Indian type food. And the Japanese program has just debuted as well. So the last thing that I just want to say is I hope you found this useful information. However, the people who need this information the most are not in this room. The people who need this information the most are 8 years old. And they live in a culture where 1 in 3 kids in grade school is now at an unhealthy weight already. And 1 in 3 kids born since the year 2000 will develop diabetes at some point in adulthood. 1 in 3 girls is going to get cancer at some point in adulthood. 1 in 2 boys will grow up to have cancer. In some cases, it's tobacco. In most cases, it is food. Because they grow up in a world where when they get home and they turn on the television set, half the commercials are snack foods and junk foods and fast food chains that lure them in and convince them that this is normal in the culture we live in. And the other half of the commercials are medicines to undo the effects of the foods. Am I wrong? This is the culture that we somehow stumbled into. We have to change that. And the way to change it is, yes, we have to lobby. I lobby. I have a whole staff doing it, and we have to fight. And we have to have educational programs. But where it really starts is with us individually, what we decide to do. A generation ago, we dealt with tobacco. In my hospital, the George Washington University Hospital, we had a serious discussion. Can we ban smoking? Can we stop smoking in the hospital? And there was a big question as to whether people would still go there if they couldn't smoke. Our patients smoked in bed. We sold cigarettes in the gift shop. And the biggest issue was, could the doctor's lounge be smoke-free? Did it have to be? Well, it sounds ridiculous that we ever had that discussion, because we made the right decision. And you know what? It's every hospital and every restaurant and every airline. And nowadays, there's somebody sitting outside in the cold, finishing their cigarette before they're even allowed in their non-smoking building. Well, with food, it's that way now. We know that we're in trouble, but we're making that decision. Can we actually have our kids eat better? Do we actually dare have healthy foods in school? Can we change things at work? The answer is we have to, but it starts one at a time. It starts with our own lives, just exploring, trying new things, seeing what they're like. And when you find a new food, a new restaurant, a new DVD, a new recipe, we share it around, and we talk about it. And if you goof up on your healthy diet, who cares? This isn't a moral issue. This is just biology. Just dust yourself off, get back on. And I predict that in 10 or 15 years, some guy's going to be standing outside his building, finishing his chicken wing, before he's allowed into his vegan building where everybody is healthy, everybody's strong, and everybody says, you remember when healthcare costs were expensive? Isn't it amazing how things have changed? That's the world we're going to build, and we're going to have fun doing it, we're going to be healthy, and the most important thing is that families can be together. And that's what we need to build. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks very much. Can we take some questions? Let's take some questions if we can, and they're going to throw us out at 7:59.
Okay, and before you ask, raise your hands first, and then get the microphone, then ask your question. There are microphones on both sides of the auditorium.
Hi, I had a question for you about the 2 glasses, the 2 half pints of grape juice.
Yes.
Everything that I have read is that it's better to eat the whole fruit.
I am so glad you raised that. Yes, in fact, I meant to say you don't have to have 2 pints of of grape juice, of blueberry juice, or anything like that. You can take the actual berry and put them on your morning pancakes or on your oatmeal. And how about some grapes on your salad or something like that? Yeah, they do it that way as a test because it allows them to make sure they know exactly the amount that works. But the whole point is just bring the natural foods into your routine, and that'll do the job. Great question.
Hi, thank you for the presentation tonight. It was wonderful. I'm just in a quandrum because one of our neurologists in the country, who's one of the leading neurologists with integrative medicine, Dr. Perlmutter, just recently came out with a book about the grain brain. And in that book, he talks about one of the biggest culprits for our brain cells is not necessarily, it's not necessarily the fats that we're eating, it's more the carbohydrates and the buildup of contributing to the plaque around that. And he even offers menus that are promoting eggs for breakfast and even the side of sausage or the fats in the meats and eggs.
Yes.
And so I'm just concerned because now I started on that and now I definitely agree with you that a vegan diet makes a lot more sense, but he is linking a lot of even fruits with higher carbohydrates and that not being good. So can you help us understand?
Sure, I feel your pain. I know David, I know him well, I've known him for many years, but if you look at the big picture, populations that eat a lot of grain, in fact, is their staple. Take Japan, rice, huge amounts of rice, and throughout Europe, throughout much of Asia, throughout parts of Africa, where grains have been consumed and the diet is extremely high in carbohydrate traditionally. What's happened? They had a very, very low rate of Alzheimer's disease traditionally, very little diabetes, no obesity at all. In the 1980s, what happened? Fast foods came in, McDonald's set up in Tokyo and Osaka, and Bill Castelli at the Framingham Heart Study was fond of saying, when you see the golden arches, you're on the road to the pearly gates. And that turned out to be true. In Japan, their rice consumption in Japan has been falling quite steadily, particularly for men in the workplace. And Alzheimer's rates have started to go up. Diabetes has gone up several-fold. Obesity is coming in. So the idea that grains are harmful really defies the epidemiology. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that grains is a big group. And there are grains that are heavily refined and sugared up, and they put them in a box with a toy inside. You know, there's all kinds of ways of having it. But I have to say that when we are trying to make decisions, we have to go by the best evidence that we've got. And that's what I've at least tried to present tonight. Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to look at the people who have the microphones. Sorry. We'll get to you.
Recently, I went on what they call the paleo diet, which is, does advocate some fats and that sort of thing, but pretty much eliminates wheat as a grain, and I think even possibly rice or the new grains that have been developed in the past 1,000 years or so. So what you're saying is sort of totally against all of that. So,
well,
what do you say?
Yes and no. Everybody here was talking about the paleo diet, which is sort of a new and attractive word that says that we should look back more at our roots, at how did our ancestors eat. But what is a little peculiar is they picked a certain band of history, which was, I want to make sure that I'm at the point where I'm killing animals for meat, but not at the point where I figured out how to make rice. And that's the history that I want to live in. It's sort of like the Amish diet. And by the way, I don't want to say anything bad about any group, but Amish culture has decided there's a certain time that we want to live in, and that's what we're going to be doing. I think the paleo diet is like that. I raised this question with Richard Leakey, the paleoanthropologist. I said, what's the natural diet of people? And where did meat eating come from? And he said, well, keep in mind, we're not carnivores. We're primates. And if you look at primates, we don't have very good vision for detecting prey at a great distance. We're not very fast. We don't have claws. We don't have canine teeth that are any longer than our incisors. You look in your cat's mouth, it's a whole different story. They've got razor blades ready to slice apart prey. And he said that we ate like orangutans or gorillas or other primates until the Stone Age. And the Stone Age gave us tools that would allow us to eat meat. And how it began in his theory, and the prevailing theory, is that people would stumble upon a carcass left by a lion or a hyena, and they might scrape the meat off the carcass and take it, but that was really only efficient when you had stone tools, and then it kind of took off from there, and once you had fire, then you could do it. But the fact is that we now know that we still have pre-Stone Age bodies, which is that meat eaters clearly get colorectal cancer much more than other people. They get heart disease more than other people, and when you put somebody on this diet that you're not supposed to eat because it's got grain in it, your heart disease reverses. It goes away. So if Dean Ornish had said to all you people whose chest pain is gone, I'm sorry that I made you eat brown rice, I mean, that's crazy. So we've got a huge amount of evidence. Before we take the next question, I just want to take your question. I'm going to repeat it from the microphone.
Coconut oil has been promoted lately.
No, I'm just going to take this real quick. Oh, okay, sure, fair enough, sure.
Coconut oil is being promoted lately, but it congeals at room temperature. Does that mean it's not as good as people say?
Oh, yeah. If it were any worse, it'd be Vaseline. I tell you, coconut oil has been getting a lot of promotion lately. I'm having trouble separating science from promotion, and I think it's mostly promotion. In other words, I think that coconut oil, which is very high in saturated fat, probably is as bad as we always thought it was. It doesn't mean you can't wax your car with it. It's okay for that. We got time for just a couple more questions? There's a question down here?
I got one.
Okay, great. And there's some questions down here if you want to also.
I understand that I've heard a lot about North Atlantic or very cold fish, that live in cold waters,
Right.
Being beneficial, and it has a lot to do with similar ways to the Mediterranean diet and the fact that a lot of fish is sometimes consumed as well.
Right.
What's your view on that compared to not having that in your diet?
Yeah, well, terrific question. Fish does have some good fat in it, the so-called omega-3 fatty acids, and you do need a little bit of omega-3. However, most of the fat in fish isn't actually omega-3, and that's the funny thing about it. 70 to 85% of the fat in fish isn't omega-3 at all. It's a mixture of saturated fat and various kinds of unsaturated fat. And in fact, that sometimes gets people into trouble because they're getting some Chinook salmon, which is more than 50% fat, and most of which isn't omega-3 at all. And they're saying, why am I having so much weight problem? And because every gram of fat has how many calories? 9 calories. They're getting this sponge filled with grease, wondering why they're having trouble with it. So I think your cat would really appreciate it to have fish a lot. They're natural carnivores. They do it really well. But for us, fish is a lot more like beef than it is like broccoli. So time for one last question? Yes.
We have a question from Texas.
Okay.
So some from Austin, Texas, from Rita Cross. Some doctors are saying that soy is not good for us. What is your opinion of that for vegetarians and vegans who rely on soy?
Okay. Everybody hear the question about soybeans? Are they good for us or bad? In 1921, researchers discovered that soybeans contain a compound or several compounds called isoflavones. And genistein is one, and there are others. And if you take a blackboard and you make the chemical structure in chalk on the blackboard, it looks similar to the chemical structure of estrogens. It's not estrogen, but it looks similar. And that got people nervous. They thought if men eat tofu, they're going to become effeminate. and their sperm count will fall. And that if women consume soy milk or tofu, their breast cancer rate could go up because they would be getting more estrogen. And if a woman had breast cancer in the past and she eats soy products, her cancer would progress. And this has become popular wisdom. But I want to tell you, it's not as if we haven't had time to sort this out. First of all, men who consume soy products have no hormonal derangement whatsoever. They don't become effeminate, their sperm count doesn't fall, and if you're wondering whether their fertility is in any way impaired, get on a plane and go to Asian countries where soy products are routinely consumed, and you'll see that fertility is not an issue. Secondly, we have at least 8 studies on women and breast cancer, and all of them show that soy does affect breast cancer risk in a beneficial way. Women who consume soy products have about 30% less breast cancer risk than women who avoid soy. Third, we now have 3 very large studies, including about 10,000 women, treated with breast cancer in the past. Those who avoid soy don't get any benefit at all. Those who eat the most soy products, like soy milk or tofu, have about a 30% reduction in the likelihood that their cancer will come back. Now, so soy is not a problem. It does seem to be beneficial. Having said that, let me be clear. A vegan diet is not the soybean promotion society. We're not out here to cheerlead for soybeans. They are healthy. They are versatile. You can replace bacon with them. That's good. You know, one day they'll make snow tires out of soy. That's good. But we don't need them. You can do a perfectly good plant-based diet in a Mediterranean pattern with vegetables and fruits and beans, or a Latin American pattern with corn and beans and that kind of thing. But soy is an Asian product that does seem to have benefits. So if you want to have it, my only suggestion is you look for the word organic on it. If it is organic, by law, it cannot be GMO. When I go home to Fargo, where I grew up, there is soybeans and corn, as far as the eye can see. And no human is going to eat any of it. It's all cattle feed, chicken feed, and hog feed. It's all GMO, and so those are the people who might need to worry most, is the people eating that kind of stuff. But the word organic will protect you from that. Let me stop at that point, and I just want to say again a huge thank you to the staff and the faculty of UNE. Thank you to Anouar. Thank you for the wonderful visionary work that you're really doing. Thank you to Barbara. I really appreciate it so much. Thanks to everybody. Good luck.